I couldn't get into a routine. I couldn't predict my schedule.
Right.
Looking like a week or a month out, and that sort of inconsistency. In my current job now, you know, it's the same team. It's the same people you're working with.
Right.
We do planning at the beginning of the year for sort of when the big deliverables will be.
Right.
And it is overall just much more predictable, which I think has helped my mental health a lot in that sense.
It's kind of like working in consulting is that you can never expect whether your next run is a jog or a sprint. And when you're in between, you're kind of walking, but you don't know, because if you walk for too long, like the HR will find you, and your chargeability just goes down, and it's harmful.
I think that in the beginning, I felt we had like a variety of arguments around like the similar theme of just like, it doesn't feel like an equal partnership in the house. Like as we're dividing all of these different tasks that need to be done, it really felt like I had to be managing everything. You just feel like you're like the manager and they are the analyst.
I distinctly remember this analogy.
Yes.
It's like we as managers, we have our orders.
We delegate and we determine the strategy.
They follow it, execute.
They execute. Or it's like, you're like the mom and they're the child almost.
Exactly.
Like it just feels like there's like a power imbalance almost. I think that there's always like an innate curiosity about like what dating other people is like, especially when you're like younger and then this is your first relationship. There's a lot of things that it's sort of like, like would this be different with someone else? Would we not have these problems with someone else? Or I think that over time though, like for example, like thinking of me now in the present moment, like I really don't feel like there's anyone out there that can compare because of like the amount of sort of like history and experience me and my boyfriend have had so far now.
记录成长轨迹，传达真实对话和共鸣的力量。欢迎来到 TT 客厅，和我一起共建留在美国工作生活的留学生社群。
Hi everyone, welcome to T's Living Room. So for this episode, I have my friend from college, Jessica, and we'll let Jessica do a little intro.
Hi, I'm Jessica. Tina and I met at UCLA. Before that, I was originally born in China, but I grew up in Ohio for pretty much all of my life before moving to California. And so then after college, I started work at Deloitte first, doing consulting in San Francisco for 2 years. And then currently I'm working at Yelp in their corporate strategy department. And I've moved to New York 1 year ago and been here since then.
At what point you decided to move?
Yeah, so I think that around like my first year living in SF, I very quickly realized that I wasn't really a fan of the city for a couple of reasons. The first was that I just couldn't stand the weather. Like it's usually always gloomy around like 60 degrees in SF, and just not having the variety in your day-to-day like weather, stepping outside, I think really bothered me. And then the second piece is I just felt like I didn't really mesh well with the overall like tech-focused corporate culture in the city. I think that a lot of the young Asian Americans in SF are coming from like a state school in California, UCLA, Berkeley, and then they have like very established social circles and very established like work circles in tech. And so I found that a lot of the conversations I have or the people I met, it just felt a little bit repetitive or very similar. And so I was really looking to just like try something new after that. And I think that the idea to leave SF came to me before determining like New York. I ended up here just because, I don't know, I feel like a lot of my existing friends were here. It's close to where my mom is now, being in the East Coast. And then, I don't know, like New York is like the melting pot of America. So when I talk about like wanting more diversity and wanting a fresh experience, after SF, I feel like it really checked off that box too.
Right. So I know you also mentioned you switched your job, like, and it kind of happened concurrently as you decided moving from SF or like moving away from SF. Like, would you say that's like an important decision for the current phase of your life?
Yeah, I think so. To rewind a little bit, before I was starting my first job at Deloitte, like I really didn't have like a clear career goal in mind. Like I think some people in college that we met are very focused on landing one specific role, or at least like the industry, just, you know, they have something that's really driving them.
Right.
I think for me, I really wasn't sure. I just wanted like a decent job that paid well and still kept my opportunities open. So that's how I ended up at Deloitte.
Yeah.
But then the reason why I switched pretty soon afterwards is because I do think I was able to quickly realize what I want and didn't want out of a job.
Right.
And I mean, I think that tech really offers a lot of flexibility in terms of like your work-life balance, in terms of the benefits, and in terms of the people that you meet through the work. So there's really no point in staying in my first job when I knew that long term I couldn't see myself like continuing to grow and become like a manager, become a director in the same spot.
I see.
But yeah, I think that was the main factor. Like I think when I was looking at my next job, the thing I mainly prioritized was really the industry above everything. For more context, like my role at Deloitte was actually a rotational program. So it was something where I could work on different, like I know consulting usually you work on different types of projects, but for this one specifically, it was switching between different practices. So it's like accounting, M&A, transactions, corporate reporting, and finance, that type of thing. As I was moving through these different, I guess, teams or projects, like I felt like the goal of the rotation was for me to find like the one team or the one practice that I felt most passionate about or was really interested in. But as I was going through all of them, like none of them really seemed that interesting to me.
Right.
And on top of that, I do think that like the day-to-day of like working in Big Four for consulting is not like that sustainable long term. Like I think people usually want to leave after 2 years as like an analyst or consultant anyways. And so with both of these combined, like knowing that work-life balance is not the best, and then also knowing that I wasn't that passionate about anything that I've seen so far, I didn't feel really motivated to continue like searching, like networking and trying other opportunities there.
I see. Yeah. And definitely we know the market has been a little unstable in the past couple of years. I feel consulting or like on the service side, you really see the ebb and flow of these projects impacted by market.
Yeah.
And I remember you had a period that you were on bench and you really disliked that.
Yes.
And that's when you decided to look somewhere else, right?
Yeah, so that's really interesting because I feel like a lot of people in Big Four, like they complain about work-life balance because they are really busy, like always. But for me, I think that it was kind of different where it would either be like nothing for weeks on end because there were like no projects or just like no work they wanted to bill to me. Or it would be like really busy, like really fast timeline. Like they just want me to ramp up and like do some task immediately without much training or guidance. I felt like I couldn't get into a routine. I couldn't predict my schedule.
Right.
Looking like a week or a month out, and that sort of inconsistency. In my current job now, you know, it's the same team. It's the same people you're working with.
Right.
We do planning at the beginning of the year for sort of when the big deliverables will be.
Right.
And it is overall just much more predictable, which I think has helped my mental health a lot in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel exactly as you mentioned, it's kind of like working in consulting is that you can never expect whether your next run is a jog or a sprint. And when you're in between, you're kind of walking, but you don't know, because if you walk for too long, like the HR will find you and your chargeability just goes down and it's harmful. Yeah, so for us, I told you, you know this, we have to find our own project. So this is my third year with Accenture and I've been on like 5-6 projects. And each time I honestly feel like I'm internally recruiting again. And a lot of the time it depends on the timing, like whether this project is sold and whether they're actually staffing new people. It's really stressful. I just went through this project for the past month and I wouldn't say, well, in consulting we call it bench or beach. Yeah, right. It's just you're not on a project, but the company still pays you. It sounds good, but not until you are on the bench for too long and you feel like there's no work for you. I think the worst time was end of 2022. I think October to December. I was on the bench for 2 complete months. I think that's when consulting was most impacted by the tech layoffs. Because, you know, if our clients don't have budget for their own people, they have no chance to have budget for a consulting firm's contract. I was on bench for 2 months. Every day I was struggling. I feel 1 month in, I started to do yoga. Just like that's when I started to do like heavy core power because I need to get these things out of my mind. And that's also when I started to apply for schools because I just didn't want to sit around. So when you were in that time of uncertainty, did you do anything to help when you know, in that situation?
Yeah, I think that there was 2 things. First, I just started recruiting, like, because I felt like if there wasn't much happening in my day job, then it's a perfect opportunity.
Right.
Like I have more time to invest in other things. And the second thing is I feel like I had to spend a lot of time, like, I guess what I did was I looked for like internal opportunities that wasn't formal projects, but that could fill my time and allowed me to develop some more skills that could be applicable for like additional roles that I was interested in.
Right. How about when you were on a project, when you were really busy, how do you deal with the stress, or how did you take care of yourself, both maybe physically and mentally?
Yeah, I think that the first like important lesson that I learned was just to detach like your feeling, like your need for validation from your work. Like I think that it was important for me to like, even though it's a high stress situation at work, to be able to like take a step back and be like, that's like work, like that's in that sphere of my life, in that context, and then afterwards, like after I shut my laptop, like I'm not going to think about that anymore. I think the other thing is like I spend a lot of time discussing, I think with you and with my boyfriend and with other friends about it.
Right.
So it's sort of like lessening the burden of the stress on yourself and sort of sharing it with some of the loved ones around you. Hearing from other friends that they've also gone through similar stressful periods in their life, just sort of like validating the feelings that you have going in. I feel like that was sort of the most helpful piece.
Yeah, I agree. I feel my boyfriend played an important role when I was on that project. I remember I was so stressed by both the people and the work. When everyone else went back to the hotel, like I went back to my boyfriend's place and he would like teach me how to throw a frisbee near the yard of his apartment. So that really helped me. And like I feel at that point I realized, okay, like having a really stable partner is so helpful in terms of mental health. It helps you to detach from the work. So in terms of, speaking of your boyfriend, in terms of the move or the switching of the job, would you say he was supportive? Like how was his opinion along your journey?
Yeah, honestly, it was very supportive. When I first moved from LA to SF, I actually switched my office. At my first job, Deloitte, it was initially like LA-based office, and then I switched it to SF because my boyfriend was having like an in-person job in the Bay Area, and so I sort of made that conscious decision to sort of move with him because we wanted to stay close together. Similarly, for SF to New York, I think that we were both in the same mindset of wanting to leave SF and wanting to try somewhere new. But again, in terms of our career, my job is fully remote, so I was able to make the transition very smoothly, but my boyfriend actually had to switch teams to a New York-based team in order to accommodate the move, and he liked his initial team a lot. It was like the team he's been with since graduating, so that was like a pretty big change, and it is like a little bit of a sacrifice when you think of it like that. But I think looking back in both instances, like it doesn't feel, I guess, so much like a compromise or a sacrifice because you're sort of, you know like the pros and the cons, you know why and like what you're doing it for, and so I think that allowed it to be like a more smooth transition for each of it, and we didn't harbor any feelings of like, oh, I have to be the one that like switches teams, I have to like change my career for this. It's sort of like a decision we come to together.
Yeah. Would you ever consider do a long distance period?
I think that I would consider it. Like I think that I could probably make it work, but I would not like to. Like I really think that throughout my relationship so far, like we've like I guess prioritized being together very much. Like we moved in together during senior year of college actually, and we've been living together every year since then.
Background is that you've been dating Ed since sophomore year?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we just celebrated our 6-year anniversary.
That's crazy.
I think within like the first probably like 1 to 2.5 maybe years that we were living together, there was a lot of like butting heads with us living together, and honestly a lot of it is just logistics stuff. Like It's just things like who is going to do the chores, like how clean do we want to keep the home, and just like in general, I feel like girls have a tendency to be the ones that are cleaner and be the ones that are just more like high maintenance, like managing all of the things that are happening in the household, like keeping track of when you need to do the laundry, when you need to wipe down the counters, and then planning even like the food. I feel like a lot of that was like I took on initially just because I felt like I was more like advanced in like
more skilled.
Yeah, I had more skills in like managing the household. I think that in the beginning I felt we had like a variety of arguments around like the similar theme of just like it doesn't feel like an equal partnership in the house. Like as we're dividing all of these different tasks that need to be done, it really felt like I had to be managing everything. You just feel like you're like the manager and they are the analyst.
I distinctly remember this analogy. It's like we as managers, we have our orders.
We delegate and we determine the strategy.
They follow it, execute.
They execute. Or it's like you're like the mom and they're the child almost.
Exactly.
Like it just feels like there's like a power imbalance almost. Like that issue sort of bleeds into a lot of other things. Like I think it just created a cloud of like general discontent in the relationship. And so I think we were just in general more like irritable during that time too.
How would you come out of that? Because I can definitely foresee that moment of me being discontent with Dawn.
So I have one advice that's more like conceptual and one that's more tactical.
Okay.
For the conceptual one, I think that over time, it's really like you guys get accustomed to each other's living habits, and you sort of meet at like a middle ground. On one hand, I feel like I'm less, I guess like strict about like how things are done. Like I feel like I was a little bit like authoritarian in the beginning where it's like my way is right. Like if something is not clean to what I think it should be done as, or if even like he's not using like the right products to like
the right process, the right procedure to clean,
then that would make me mad and we would have like an argument. Like I think on one hand, like my boyfriend sort of learned along the way of like how to manage the household and like which tasks should be done. And then on the other hand, I also think I like cooled down a little bit and was less strict about like my expectations in that sense. And so we were able to meet in the middle, but that did take time. Going into the tactical solution, honestly, having a chores like whiteboard was a game changer. Like literally just like assigning like this person is going to take out the trash. And then this person is going to like do this week. I feel like that just adds so much structure. It's not like these arguments come out of nowhere. Like it's not like any little thing will make you annoyed. It's like you have something.
It's like, hey, documented.
It's documented that like keeps track of things. What other thing? This is like a subset, but like so what we actually ended up doing is like we would say, for example, like laundry, and then we would make like check marks. Like if it's blue, like he did it. If it's red, I do it each week. And so then I feel like you could see like who did more, like literally like visually be able to see and like conceptualize some of these.
Quantify
it really helps.
Frequency. That's so funny.
Compromise doesn't have to be like meeting directly in the middle. It's just something that will make you feel like a little bit better at the end of the day.
That is your like first serious relationship, and you've been dating him since sophomore year in college. I mean, it's both a lucky situation, as in I know how hard is dating market these days, but from the other side, like would you say you were ever curious about whether you've dated enough people to make this choice?
I think that there's always like like an innate curiosity about like what dating other people is like, especially when you're like younger and then this is your first relationship. There's a lot of things that it's sort of like, like would this be different with someone else? Would we not have these problems with someone else? Or I think that over time though, like for example, like thinking of me now in the present moment, like I really don't feel like there's anyone out there that can compare because of like the amount of sort of like history and experience me and my boyfriend have had so far now. If you're meeting someone new, like you can see that like, oh, this guy's like cute or something, but I would never think about like, oh, like what would it be like to like date like someone else, to like date them, just because like it just pales, I feel like, in comparison to like the amount of like memories that you have with the person you're with. Like thinking about like how long it took for them to understand you, for you to understand all parts of them. and for all the time that you've spent together, like I don't think you get as like distracted by those thoughts with time.
That makes sense. Yeah, like I feel you've seen me through my different phase of like relationship, dating, etc. And I feel as a friend, you can probably tell I'm definitely the happiest in my most current years once I, start to date Don. Like I feel like I told you, he's like my best friend. You said your lease is ending this fall in New York, and you mentioned something about you want to both do remote work and travel around the world. I feel we always talk about it. Yeah, like I wonder whether there's any updates regarding that plan.
Yes, so I'm still hoping to start my nomadic travel at the end of my lease in New York, which is this September. Initially, I was actually thinking of switching jobs this year just because I hit my 2 years. Like, I feel like this is a time where I could change and have a new opportunity. But I think I'm going to stay with my current job because it is remote, because it is flexible, because I sort of, after 2 years, like know what to expect and feel pretty comfortable in my job. So we're really trying to like prioritize the traveling at the end of the year and set ourselves up to be able to do that.
Wow.
The other thing is that my boyfriend needs to get promoted this year to be able to apply to be fully remote. So that's another, fingers crossed. But yeah, I think that it's just like in this phase of life that we're in right now, like finally, like the traveling has shifted to become the priority. And so because of that, we're okay with, sticking with our jobs, sacrificing some of like the logistics things to be able to make that happen.
Right. And how long will you plan to do that for?
So I think that it'll just be like a couple of months, maybe like 3 to 6 months where we'll be traveling around. And then the goal will be, we just do like short-term rental in a variety of different cities. So we're thinking of like Mexico, CDMX, Europe, jumping around different cities, places that are still like relatively close to US time zone to make working a little bit easier. It won't be like we're on the road traveling like every week or every day. We'll probably try to stay like a month or 2 in every place that we decide on.
Do you see yourself settling down in the US though? Or like what does settling down mean for you?
Honestly, at this point, I think that settling down means like buying a house somewhere. Yeah, because I think they kind of like go hand in hand. Like if you buy a house, you're going to want to stay there for like at least longer than 1 year. And at the moment, I am leaning towards staying in America. So I don't know. Like if you asked me this a few years ago, like I think I would have had a lot like broader ideas. Like why not settle in Europe or in Asia? Like that sounded so exciting. But as I've gotten older, I guess I don't know. Like I think familiarity is very comforting. Like even thinking about like starting a family, things like the education system, like I think having the experience in America and just knowing the whole process of like applying to colleges and how that works, I think gives you a lot more stability.
Yeah, I feel recently I've been thinking about this as well. Like I even start to think about, wait, I kind of am familiar with the school system in the New Jersey area because I went through school system there. So if I have kid, I'll probably not send them to a school in the Bay Area because it's too competitive out there. But I heard New Jersey is getting very competitive lately as well. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe in 10 years it will be different. And I don't know about kids yet. It seems like you have your family, you want kids. Okay.
I've always like planned like bigger milestones, I feel like, in my life that I know I want to reach. So I do know I want to buy a house at some point. I want to start a family at some point, those types of things. But the smaller details, I don't really know. We'll figure it out along the way.
Do you talk about this with Ed?
Yeah, we talk very candid, like very transparently with each other about this type of thing. I don't think that there's really any surprises in both of our goals, and I think that they align well. And so I think that also gives me like more confidence in sort of setting these milestones for myself, like knowing that I can expect these things to happen because we're on the same page.
Yeah, I feel when Don comes back to America this year, we'll have more of these conversations of, at least where we're going in the next 3 to 5 years. And I'm still kind of debating between staying in New York or going back to SF. So I think we'll see. This should be it. Yeah, and I think that was great. And thank you.
Thanks for watching.
See you.
Bye.